Hello out there. Today I want to talk to you guys about what it takes to repair your credit, what it really takes. And here's what I think are the three essential elements that you need to truly restore your credit. So let's check this out. Okay. First of all, I'm going to tell you that these three elements, they work whether you're working on your credit yourself or whether you're hiring a credit repair specialist, individual or company to help you with your credit. First, I'm going to talk about this. As I talk to folks every day who call me or about credit, there are, amongst all the various different types of people, everybody with different situations, scenarios, different concerns, different goals, different dreams and plans, I find that it all comes down to essentially three types of people. First of all, I have the know-it-alls. And what I mean by know-it-all is, I don't mean that in a bad way, but what I see is folks who know it all. They know about all the credit basics, which is great. I believe in informing and being informed. And so you have those. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people who know all the credit myths. And so they say, oh, I know all about credit. They know all of the credit hacks. They watch YouTube, they watch Instagram, they watch other promotions, things like that. And folks out there with advertisements saying about what they can and can't do in terms of credit repair. Things like credit sweeps and promotions for $5,000 deletions or that sort of thing. They also know about all the other misinformation that's being bandied about amongst people, just people with misunderstandings, like I said, or limited information. So you have those people. Unfortunately, most of those people think that their credit is good, their credit file is good, they just got a bad score, where they're not understanding that you got to have when you have a bad score, it's because you have a bad file, which means you got bad information on there. The second type of people that I generally talk to, I often find myself talking to, are the doubters. Now, these people have doubts about everything when it comes to credit and what they understand about credit. Some of them have heard that credit repair doesn't work at all, it's a scam, or they feel like it's something that can easily be done, you don't need to pay anybody, that sort of thing. Then there's people who say, well, they heard that, well, they don't think that it'll work for them specifically. So credit repair may work, but not for them because their situation is bad, it's terrible, or theirs is too bad, it can't be fixed, or it's not worth it, things of that nature. And then the third type of person that I often talk to are what I call the burnt people, the people who've been burned by either credit repair companies, bad actors, scammers, say it that way, or folks who are incompetent, where they either have a limited skill set when it comes to repairing credit, or they're using tactics that are inappropriate for a person's situation. Because there's a lot to handle there. So they don't believe, they've been burned, and so now they're skeptical of the whole credit repair, the whole concept of credit repair, and whether it's a real thing or not. So, with that said, the three essential elements, the first of the three essential elements that I think everyone needs, that anyone who wants to repair their credit need to have, first and foremost, is belief. Okay, so I'll tell you about other folks. I have customers, past clients that didn't always have the success story. I've talked in other videos about various success stories. I have plenty of those, but I also have folks that did not get the desired result that they were looking for. And part of it, I'll say this, part of it is because the failure was on my part partially, and I would say it was also on them, because what often happened is, in the early days of me doing this as a profession, I had folk who came to me, and even when I explained to them about the process and tried to set an expectation based on the real process and everything about it, I had folks who still had an expected outcome. Like I told them it might take 3 to 6 months based on their situation, but they still wanted to believe it'd only be a month, and maybe only be 2 months. And so what happened is, just as we're starting to get things going, and they, after paying me for a first month and the second month, and not seeing the movement that they expected based on unrealistic expectations, and despite the expectations that I tried to set for them, they said, oh, I forget it, it's not working, because they're either one of the doubters. Most of the time they were the doubters. The burnt folks usually have a little bit more patience if you're showing them the right process. But they were either one of the doubters, or sometimes they were the know-it-alls, because despite the fact that their credit was in a situation that needed help, they saw me doing things that they did not recognize to be the way that it's done, and so they didn't have any belief in the effectiveness of my process. So I believe that it's important that when you take on any activity, anything, and you're expecting results and you want an outcome, you got to believe that it can work, and you got to believe that you can do it. Okay, so I have many people like that. Now, I generally speaking, when I'm talking to folks and I want to help them with their credit, I know that if folks are indicating to me that they have a certain expectation that I know is not within the realistic realm of how credit repair works, I just say, I'm not the guy for you, and I try to either, I don't really recommend anybody else because I don't know anybody else to recommend, but I would certainly leave them with a course of action on what to do, because usually when people have that much doubt, they usually have decided they're going to try to take it on yourself, which is, I think it's great. If you got the time, energy, and the skill to clean up your own credit, oh yeah, I say absolutely, and I provide guidance on that and things like that. I'm not trying to promote anything, but I have courses, and I've had consultations with folks where I walk away from them knowing that they're not going to hire me, and I tell them, hey, here's what you can do. I'm not a gatekeeper in that sense. If folks want help, I'll spend a little time, and more than happy to help them, because I want to see everybody win. So having the correct mindset or outlook, that's the first part of belief. So I think that we should be positive, again, in general, but positive in the fact that credit repair as a concept is an effective process. It does work. It's real. Because a lot of folks think it's not real. They think it is what it is, and it is real. Now, I believe that positive thinking is important, because if nothing else, if you believe in positivity, your mind will be in the right place, and you'll be able to better cope with the stress of working on your credit, or the stress of having bad credit and being stopped from pursuing your goals, or being haunted by collectors, collection agents and things like that, trying to collect on money. And so with having a positive outlook, a positive mindset, and deal with the stress, you can make better decisions that are needed in order to clean up your credit. And again, if you're doing it yourself, you can make better decisions in terms of the actions you need to take. If you're hiring somebody, you can make better decisions, because with some knowledge, you'll be able to know if you're hiring somebody that is legitimate and capable and committed to helping you with your credit goals. You'll get better results. Now, I believe in, there's a concept in a book called The Big Leap, and it talks about power of positive thinking. And it talks about prayerizing, picturizing, and actualizing. Okay, now I'm a spiritual person, but whether you believe in that or not, the basics of it is by prayerizing, you're basically focusing, you're praying, and I'm all about praying. But if you don't think of that way, you can think of prayerizing as basically your mind focusing on the desired outcomes you want and saying, this is what I want, this is what I want, declaring it and being clear with yourself and with God that what your desired outcomes is what you have. Then the second part is picturize, where you picture in your mind the goals, the outcome that you want, your goals, and you keep create that in your mind's eye. I know some people refer to it as manifestation, things of that nature, but that's the important part, is that you picture it in your mind. Because when you picture it in your mind and you picture the correct actions and the desired outcome, you're training your mind to get you ready to do what you need to do to get there. And then the third one is where you actualize. That's through the actions that we take. So if you're praying on desired outcome, and then you picture it in your mind, and then you'll be guided with the right, directions. You'll be guided to take the correct actions to actualize your desired outcome, which is, in this case, the discussion, we're talking about great credit. Now, this is a fact, that beliefs, behaviors, and belonging. Beliefs determine your behaviors. Behaviors determine your actions and your results. And your actions will determine your belongings. So you gotta believe in the right thing so that you'll be encouraged to take the right actions, which will get you to the right outcome that you desire. And I got that from, I forget where I got it from, but that is a quote. That is a construct that I believe in very much. So the second part, we talked about belief. We talked about, now let's talk about trust, because that's a second element. That's a second part of the belief construct, because when we believe in something, we got to trust it. So in this effective goal journey to increase your credit, you got to be able to trust the process. Once you understand what is the proper process to fixing your credit, you got to trust the process. And again, this applies to more than just, this applies to everything. You got to trust the process. And this is regardless of whether you're going to do your credit yourself or you're going to do it, hire somebody to do it. But in the case of hiring someone, you want to be able to follow a sort of a central idea that we adopted in the underwriting world when we were reviewing a file. We say we trust but verify. And so with credit repair companies, you want to trust if someone that you're comfortable with, that you get to know, like, and trust through conversation, and determining what their capabilities are, and that they understand what your desired goal and outcome is. You want to trust what they say, but verify them through research, due diligence, checking them out, to see if there's complaints against them that are substantial, or they have a pattern of fraud or misrepresentation or something like that. Asking about, getting referrals is always great, because if you got somebody who's working with somebody and they refer you and say, hell yeah, this guy, he or she is terrific, that's always great. But always trust. You can trust and verify. Trust but verify. And through verification, if they determine that this person is not a good fit for you, you keep the search going to find someone else. You also want to trust in that they are compliant, that they're legal, that they have license for your state. If your state requires a license, are they bonded? In case you have to sue them, you want to know that, I'm not saying that, but they got to be bonded. That's a requirement. That's regulatory. So you want to make sure that you verify that. And you also want to be able to trust the process by understanding that what their strategy and approach is for working on your credit, and that that they have your best interest at hand. Because oftentimes and even recently, I've had a situation where someone hired a company and they thought that they were hiring someone to help them with their credit and also help them resolve some of their debt issues. But it was discovered through a conversation with me and some research that the company is actually a debt dispute company. Their job, their main mission is to charge people to negotiate all of their debt and try to get it all discounted and resolved. So but here's the thing: if someone wants their debt resolved and they don't care about their credit in terms of quality, health, and scores, this will be a terrible way to go, because part of the process of debt negotiation, debt disputing with debt settlement companies is the first thing they tell you to do is stop paying your bills so that you fall into collections, so that you put pressure on your creditors to negotiate discount settlements, but you're destroying your credit in the process, and then you got to go back and fix your credit later. I had a prospective client, and she's soon to be a client because she's signing up with me. That's very much what happened to her. She had signed up with a company back in September that she thought was a credit repair company. And she noticed over the last 3 months, September, October, November, and then well into December, that her credit scores were going down, and she couldn't understand why. So she was referred to me, and she called me and asked me, hey, what's going on? Excuse me. And so as I did some research, I pulled her credit as I normally do. I had her sign up for credit monitoring. I looked at her credit, and I noticed that she didn't have any collections, and she had accounts that just started going into delinquency when she started with these folks in September. And I asked her about it, and she says, well, they told me to stop paying my bills. She actually didn't have collections. She actually didn't have late payments, but her goal, she had okay credit, but she was looking to increase her credit, and she was, interested in resolving some debt issues. But they misled her into believing that once they wipe away, they would work and negotiate away her credit, her debts, and that then she could build her credit from there. But what they wanted her to do, what they told her to do, and she did, is she stopped paying her bills, and then she went from being current to 90 days late, well on her way to being past default, well on her way to going into collections. And I said, no, your credit is going down because they told you to stop paying. This doesn't sound like credit repair. Turns out that's what it was. She gave me the name of the company. I researched them. I said, no, I think here's what they're doing. And she said, are you sure? I said, yeah, I recommend you call them and you ask them a series of questions and ask them exactly what it is they're doing. She called them. Subsequently, she called me back and she said, yeah, I called them and they told me exactly what you said. They told me that they want me to go into default so we can put pressure on my creditors and try to get discounted settlements on my debt. And that then after that's all done, we would work to fix my credit then. She started out in the 600s, the low 600s. She's now in the 450s because they told her to stop paying all her bills. And so that was not the service that she was looking for, the type of service. So my point is, guys, be clear on the strategies. A good, reputable credit repair company doesn't keep secrets. My clients out there, you guys know, the ones who are my clients, I tell everything. I'm transparent. I'm educating because that's part of the credit restoration process. A good credit person is going to educate you. They're not going to keep secrets, keep you in the dark. My clients can call me directly on my cell phone, A lot of companies can't do that. But it doesn't matter whether you get me or somebody else. If they're doing the same thing, that should be what you would want to be able to trust them and trust their process. So be clear on, if you're hiring someone, be clear on their approach and their goals and their strategy, the outcomes that they should be able to tell you the outcomes from the actions that they're going to take on your behalf. If you're DIY and you plan on working on your credit yourself, you got to be able to trust the sources that you're using for your information and your guidance. So again, trust but verify. Make sure it's someone who has a track record of helping folks, not just someone who has a track record of selling credit repair information or so-called, if you go to Etsy and a lot of those places, you'll see people selling dispute letters. You'll see them selling credit repair kits and things like that. And a lot of them have some useful stuff in there. Because I look and see what's in the marketplace. And I've been asked to offer some of these things, which I'm working on, but I don't want to just put anything out there. I want to make sure that whatever I put out there is valuable and can really help people, not just to make a couple of bucks. So be clear on their strategy, be clear, and that they make sure they understand what your desired outcome is. So that goes a long way towards establishing that trust.